Hi everyone, I am super happy to be here and grateful to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to talk to all of you. So just a bit about me, because I've been told that I am not often good at introducing myself, so I thought I'll stop and do it. I just start talking. So hi, my name is Gielen. I am passionate about systems thinking and basically making sense of things. I often talk in analogies because it's what helps me to understand things. So I like doing that with others too. I've been working for over 25 years in various roles. I had the opportunity to work for big cloud service providers, but I've also worked for public sector, private sector. On the last 6-7 years or so, my work has been focusing on internal platforms and the platforms delivering value. And I often talk about unframed thinking, and that's not because I'm against frameworks, so I want to clarify that. I respect frameworks, and I actually like learning about them so that I can have informed discussions. But I think frameworks, tools, approaches, concepts are things that we should all respect, learn from, and put in our toolkit, and then use whatever fits the context or the need or whatever we're doing. Okay, so enough about myself. So a theme park. So before I start talking about the theme park or why I selected a theme park, I just want a quick raise of hands. Have you been to a theme park at least once in your life? Yeah. So that most people, I thought that would be the case, so I'm not surprised. So this should be easy. What I want to ask you is to please imagine that you are entering that theme park. So you usually get there on your own, with your family, with friends, and as you enter the theme park, you start an experience. You set expectations, right, in your mind. Usually there's like smell of candy, popcorn, laughter, maybe a baby crying, people walking past. And then sometimes you, sometimes someone else, what happens? You tend to look for a map, yeah, to know where are you going? So which ride are we going to do first, etc., etc. See, the reason why I wanted to talk about theme parks is because theme parks are layered, right? They are a complex system, if you think about it. There is a lot going on. Theme parks have different rides, serving different needs for different people. Each of those rides have security that needs to align to, compliance. The whole theme park has regulations. The whole theme park has dependencies, the electricity, the car park, the security, the food stands, the healthy, the things about ingredients, allergies, etc. It all works in a cohesive way to provide an experience. But so are organizations. When you enter an organization has different domains, different areas, different functions, all working together for a cohesive experience. So, what's another characteristic of theme parks? And then I have a picture in there. That ride is 113 years old and is the oldest operating roller coaster in the world. Does anyone know where this is?
Coney Island.
Yes. And so what's fascinating about this? There is other rides. There is one in United States, but I believe it's not been continually operating. So this one took the prize. It says Melbourne here. Is that the right one? I don't know. Okay. I know it's, okay, so the Great Scenic Railway, the point I wanted to make is that it's been continually operating. This ride uses a brakeman, so it's an actual person. I actually seen a video of a woman, not a man, but braking the ride. There is another one like this in Denmark, I believe, and I am not, please don't think like I know a lot about rides. I don't. I just, once I get into reading something, I can't stop. Okay. Why am I talking about this? Because in your organization, there is also platforms that are old, systems that are legacy, cloud, hybrid, complexity, right? And in a theme park, you need to get it all to work together, and so do you in your organization. So my question to everyone, or what I want to say to everyone is, theme parks offer a cohesive experience, but do organizations? I'll argue very often not. Obviously, it depends on the size. Obviously, it depends on what is in use in that organization. But generally, I find that you will have pockets of agility, pockets of DevOps principles, pockets of doing things in a modern way, or none at all. Maybe everyone has concentrated on the experience of the product that gets developed by said company and by the external customers, but internally, you cannot really say that there is something that is pervasive to the whole organization. So, all of this to reiterate that systems are complex, and because systems are complex, you end up seeing, or throughout the years, I have seen recurring traps or anti-patterns that just things that happen again and again. I think there's a bit of a theme, because yesterday I was obviously listening to talks, and today as well, and anti-patterns has been mentioned. So I think it's nice to share the pain, right? Okay, so let's talk about a few common ones. Starting small. Because the organization is so big, because this is so complex, we are going to start in a tiny part of the organization. I'm not saying that is necessarily wrong. What I'm saying is that if you start in small, you need to be aware of the bigger picture. Don't ignore it, because whatever you're doing is part of the system. What has this to do with DevOps? Well, if you start small, great, and maybe you are thinking about DevOps with that starting small, but then you reduce DevOps to product delivery only, as if it's something that the other people they wouldn't get it. Like, no, they cannot do it. And it's a shame, because if you think about the system, and this is like a very quick way of me representing the organization, it's layered, it's complex. You have customers that may be external, and they have products that they're consuming, customer, and then you may have developers, obviously, built in-house, or not, actually, you may not. You have dev-facing platforms, other platforms, foundational, etc. It is layers. So what I'm saying is that often I see that the efforts are done on the customer-facing products, but they don't necessarily are carried out or consider developer-facing products or platforms or other platforms or dependencies in general. So the track 3. So if, Gielen, you're saying that starting small may not be the way, okay, so I'll start big. But then you design for, or often what I find is you design for a one-size-fits-all mentality. And we all know what goes wrong with that. You have the actual needs, and then you have the actual solution to the needs, which has nothing to do with, they don't meet, they don't match. What has this to do with DevOps? Okay, you're thinking about DevOps, but you're thinking for one customer, end user experience only. So what do I mean is people sit across those layers. You have platforms at different layers of abstraction, and you have people, teams at different layers in your organization. And you should think about the external customers for sure. You should think about the developers, but I find very often that not all types of developers or users or consumers are being considered, but just one. So everything is designed with a copy-paste or an approach that does not take into account the needs of the actual person that will be using the service. Okay. So I think I talked enough about layers, but I thought I wanted to represent it with a picture. Once again, you have a user, a customer, but that user, customer maybe or is likely to need something from someone else. if you are serving someone else's need, try and think of that person that is using what you build, what you do, as your customer too. And that is a good way to ensure that then you go through all of these layers and you take into account all of the different recommendations on experience, adoption, etc. Another way of thinking about it, there is code, inside code, inside code, inside code. Code does not live just in one part of an organization. People in the platforms is also using infrastructure as code. A developer is using code. So actually, the platform could be classed or thought about as a developer who's building stuff for another developer that is consuming it, right? And that's what I want people to think about and consider. So track number 5, you design or you think about technology to enable DevOps, and you concentrate on that. We're gonna get this system, I'm gonna make an effort not to mention products. You're gonna get something for your Kanban, for your tickets, for your anything, and that will fix it, right? That will make everyone work in DevOps in an agile manner, because that's all you need, of course. But you don't think about the teams, you don't think about how they're organized, you don't think about what they need from a process perspective, or do you think about the adoption and how do you get them to change? How do you get them to stop doing what they do and start doing something new? So this is, I mentioned unframed before, and this is one of the unframed cards. By the way, I share them on my website. You're welcome to use them. I use these to spark conversation. I use these as a way to talk about, are you doing this in your organization or not? So on this case, I want to talk about, are we iterating in our software, in our coding, but are we not thinking about how our teams are organized, how they collaborate, how do we get them to do what we want them to do? So going back to the theme park, I'm going to call it the Ackman theme park. And everyone here thought they understood the system. The reason why I'm calling it the Ackman theme park is because I wrote an article not long ago where I couldn't talk about specific companies, so I just combined and created a fictional company, and I just wrote my experience with all of these companies together. And it was to share what I have learned through the years I've been working. So one thing I've learned is that when you go into organizations, it's like going into a theme park and not finding that map, not knowing where things are. You think people know the system, but they don't necessarily know it, or they cannot point you to the information you need. And I think Torsten before was talking about ask. And yes, you need to ask, you need to find out, what does this system look like? What are the dependencies? What are the teams? What are the platforms? Who consumes, who uses what, etc., etc. So I use this on frame card often about using the whole lens. Yes, you need to zoom in, but you also need to zoom out so that you understand the landscape, and then you can start designing and planning and working on your efforts. And that is how clarity emerges. So if I use this fictional company as an example, if I continue to use it, on large organizations at Ackman, my approach would have been go in and try to understand, okay, I'm hearing there is a lot of pain and loads of problems, but the first thing I want to understand is the landscape. What is what, who is where, and then I can better understand the pain, and then we can plan for it. So what am I asking? I'm asking the equivalent of what are your rights or what are your platforms on this theme park? I'm asking about who the peoples are, what are the teams, what are the dependencies. As you would do, it's the same than in a theme park if you think about it. If a ride is an experience, you could say that a ride is a service. And then behind those services, it's likely that there will be platforms. And behind those, there will be people that is responsible to maintain them, to make sure they're running, to go do the governance, to operate them. But then there is also other dependencies, some internal, some external. Then there is the people that is experiencing these services. So, like when you go on the theme park, yourself or anyone going to that ride on the theme park. I wanted to use this quote because I really like it, and it's also on the cards, and it's suitable for what we're talking about. You think that because you understand one, you must therefore understand two, but you forget that you must also understand and. And this talks to me and to work on big organizations, because often it's that and where the dependencies lie and what is forgotten about or not considered. So it's like mapping a theme park and going, I have my ride 1 and I have my ride 2, but I have not really thought, discussed, or learned about all of the other things that 1 and 2 depend on. So the transformation anti-pattern pattern is where you combine them all, and basically you just ignore the bigger picture and you continue to do so. So you start small, start big, start medium size, whatever, but you ignore the bigger picture, and that's what I want to encourage people not to do. So I talked on the summary about this, that I was going to introduce evolutionary platform ops, and it's a term I use often, and I realize I have not necessarily explained what I mean. So when I talk about evolutionary platform ops, what I mean is reclaiming operations as the intentional, continuous work that makes platforms deliver value, which actually is the original meaning of it. And I added evolutionary because it should iterate by design like everything else does. So the lens I use to summarize this, because I realize there's lots of words in there, is that platforms aren't just technology, they are systems of value. Ultimately, if you have a platform, it should be delivering value to someone, and that someone then you need to understand, and then you need to cater for, etc., etc. If you try and shift and think this way, then you start not only being able to apply principles and disciplines to your platforms, but also identifying things that you may not call platforms, because platforms are not just technology. And things that maybe can be delivered as a service, and that you can identify, and then you can arrange your team to do that way. So zooming out, how do I then find these systems of value, so these platforms, or what they are? It's quite simple, really. You go to the organization, you try and understand what zones, and by the zones I mean, in the theme park, you usually have rides in zones. In an organization, you will have platforms sitting at different layers of abstraction. To avoid concepts of platform and, again, going back to the technology, I tend to talk about services and service types. And that's how I tend to group them, which I find very helpful. So what rights, what platforms, what services, who are the customers of those services, how valuable are they, do they have any pain points, etc. When I talk about services, I tend to imagine the theme park with zones like the ones represented on the picture. As I said, I want to move away from talking about tech. So I will ask foundational infrastructure, for example, what are you doing to offer those services and how do you go on about it? Business capability service, what I mean is, do you have teams, functions, platforms, groups that are aligned to specific business domains? I don't know, accounts receivable, payments, etc. Experience services, do you have services such as portals that people use internally, externally? Who's behind those? Are you developing on those, or is someone else? It could be a third party. Builder. So this could be an internal development platform, but I wanted to move away from that term purposely. I wanted to say, what team do you have that is enabling a developer to do their job? And how do they work? Do they have a product-centric mentality, platform thinking, or etc.? And then there may be others, so this is not exclusive. There is a thing in the middle there, which is a canvas I use, and I will be soon sharing. To be honest, I wanted to have it ready to share today, but I didn't get to it, but I will add it to my site or share it on LinkedIn after. So then once you know what is what, you can talk about the dependencies. What are the dependencies? What are the queues? And I use queues purposely because obviously in a theme park you will have rides that have very long queues and you need to find a way to minimize that. You may have rides in a theme park that have some issues with security where people need to be measured and maybe it's not, or people skipping or something. Think about it in that and do some parallel thinking and compare it to your organization and the problems you may be encountering. So how long does it take? What are the boundaries, etc., etc.? Where do we start? The whole point of making all of these questions is that you zoom out, you identify, and you know where to start. Because often we want to improve, but we don't know where, if the organization is very big, or we want to avoid that small pocket and not considering the bigger picture that I said before. So ultimately, and another on-frame card, design for the system and not the parts. You could put this up, get in a room and talk about, okay, we are doing this change, or we want something to change. We're having some pain because, I don't know, it takes too long for us to get infra or something else. I'm quite close to infra, so sorry, I keep using it as an example. How do we design for the system and not the part? How do we avoid those bottlenecks? How can we help that team ABC also leverages and uses concepts and considers things like DevOps, agility, platform engineering, etc. And we make it so that it's across. And this is key because often shared bottlenecks are more powerful because they find out if you fix something that is stopping multiple teams, multiple functions, slowing down multiple groups, you will find that it's quite powerful on the impact that fixing that can have. Think in plural. So as I was saying, platforms is more than one. There are different layers. And customers, you may not want to call them customers, users, developers, personas, people, ultimately different types. So diversity also applies to when we're planning to change, when we want someone to adopt a new way of working or to understand a new way of working. So some takeaways from today. I want to talk, I talked about, transformation traps or the anti-patterns. I talk about the evolutionary platform ops and the concepts, and I know it's a bit loaded, but I will be sharing more on that soon. The zooming in and zooming out, understanding your landscape before you embark into something, or if you want to make something change in your organization. Understand the organization, understand the context that you're part of, and make sure that you do that zooming out and zooming in a combination. Think in plural, and I would encourage you, if I can, to go ahead and create your theme park map. I'm not saying this will not completely exist, it may do, but just get together, use what I share or questions or something else, just get together and try and understand, okay, so what type of services do we have, who's behind those services, how could we help the team's functions behind those to improve so things flow, so that the things work better for everyone, so that we apply DevOps principles not only to our pocket and to our area, but to other areas too, and that ultimately we make the organization better. So sharing is caring. You can find the on-frame cards already on my website, but I will share the slides, I promise. And I will share some more information in Evolutionary Platform Ops and some canvases in case you want to have a go and try. It shouldn't take long. I want to thank you. Thanks, everyone. If you want to connect, I'm on LinkedIn, and the orange one is my website, which I will be updating, I promise. Thanks a lot.